Hola, my name is Enrique Pérez Soler, and I'm from Engineering Art. That was kind of weird. Anyways, so a little bit about myself. I'm a software engineer from Spain. I moved to Stockholm, Sweden to study a master in software engineering, and I got hired as a game developer in a game studio. And I loved every second of it. But I have another passion that is art and that I've been nurturing since I was a kid. So a few months ago, I spoke with my company and they allowed me to switch roles. And for the last 3 months, I've been a game artist. And I have learned so much in so little time. So I will be making a series of videos about the different things that I've learned, either for beginners using the Photoshop tool or pursuing a career as a game artist, or simply want to learn digital art tools and tips. So if you like these topics for videos and you want to see more of my art journey or my work, follow any of these links and you'll find what you're looking for. Now let's get right into it. We're gonna go through the Photoshop tips that I have learned personally.
Roll sound. Rolling.
How many takes does this take?
Rolling. Sound production, take 2.
There's no specific order for these tips. I'm just going to put them out there. I have found Photoshop tips and techniques within the tool itself that so far, before I learned about them in my job, I was doing these manually. So you will find that even though they're not very elaborate to do manually, you will find that it's much easier and I think more calculated doing it this way. So firstly, something that you should probably do too, working on a white canvas. It's not recommended because then you can never see your whites if you're coloring with values. So firstly, I want to go through something that I've learned that is very much related to anybody that's doing UI for games or even movies or logos. We're gonna go through the layer effects. I mostly use them to do word art, like fonts for games, but it can be used for if you do stickers for the artist alley, or if you want to do certain emblems or pins or something. This could help you. You'll see why soon. Now, I'm gonna use an example with text. So there's 2 aspects to this. These effects are the same for text and for graphics on their own. Oh yeah, there's something that I've also learned that I did not know. This must be generally known, but I didn't know when I started using Photoshop. There's this option here in the brush upper bar where if you turn it on, the pressure on the pen is set by, the transparency of the stroke is set by the pressure in the pen. It's really good for shading. So after learning this made it so much more easier, and now it's like very easy to, something to keep in mind if you guys like it. Also, I've noticed that there's another tip, which is you see the lining on these strokes, how they are very separated and there's not like a clean line. You can check also on your brush settings, which look like this. You can click on that. No, that's not it. Look like this. There's a section here called spacing. If you tone this down, you see how the stroke, it gets smaller. So make sure you check on that before thinking that it's a bug of the latest Photoshop update or whatever. So once we do that, you'll see that when we do this again, it's much smoother. But beware, this would be more costly in performance. If you have a really crappy computer like I used to have, this would make it go slow. So once that's set, let's see, I'll do a simple ball here. I'm gonna shade this really quick and I'm gonna put what I just told you in effect. There we go. So we have this ball. So now there's several things we can do with these two, with text and asset or graphic. So we're going to start with the text. So this layer effects here, you can see that we have different things that we can do with this. So I'm just going to go through the ones that I found more useful and that I've used more currently, and that is the bevel one. So bevel is actually when you go to an edge, like if you have a cube, you know how there's a line that defines the border between both of them. When you bevel something, you split that border in 2. It's a way to do the border a little bit more rounded. So here, for instance, we have these options to make the bevel, and we can make the size smaller. We can soften it. We can change the colors. We can make it go up, or we can make it go down. So if there's a lighting coming up from one angle, it would light up certain. So we have here the angle where the light can come from and the strength of it. So you can just mess around with these, and I did not know these existed. So far I was doing the beveling myself, and as you can imagine, it took a lot of time and it took a lot of energy. Here you can strengthen the opacity of the lights. So you have the highlight mode and the shadow mode. and you can strengthen these up, and you can see that they become more volumetric and they make it more three-dimensional. And also you can change the color of these things. You can have like a very rim light or a very dark warm light coming from it, have a bouncing light too here if you want to have like a more purplish bouncing light here. Yeah, so this is the inner one, but you can also do the outer one. It makes the borders, instead of making it inside the font itself, it does it outside. And you know, here you can just do the same thing, emboss. Oh yeah, this is for, I think it's for like half and half, as you can see here. You can increase the size here too. You can see like, you know, like that, or have a little bit more subtle, and it can grow. So like really there's no too much to this. You could just mess around with it and then, you know, see how soft you can do it and how you can mess around with it. The best way of learning is to mess around with it. That's what I did, at least. So there's still a lot of things that I don't know how to use, but I know that it is really, really useful if you want to use it for word art or any kind of text that you want to use on your game or your project or anything like that. There's additional things you can add here. Texture, I don't generally use this too much. Yeah, there's like different kind of textures that you can add to this to like sort of give it whatever you need. Either way. So now we go to stroke. It's like this thicker outline, outer line that you can have on text, so you can have on graphics. This was really, really useful when I was doing comics, but I was doing this on my own. So straight lines was okay, but when it came time to the curves or do, you know, circles, it was a little bit of a pain. But here it's, you increase this and you have the border that you want. So this right now, the setting is for the outer, as you can see here, outside, but we can also have the inside. So we can have a bevel, oops, sorry, here. Of course, you know, the math is not exactly precise. Like here, as you can see, there are corners in between, but it is rounded because it's mathematically calculated. So there'll be round edges, which might make it look a little bit less appealing, maybe, if you're going for a certain material or you're going for a certain vibe. We're gonna activate the bevel too. We're going to change the color of the stroke, because you can change the color of the stroke too. It can be red. Texture, I really don't like it. As you can see, it affects also the edge of it, so it is very helpful, I think. And then we go to inner shadows. So the inner shadow is basically what it tells it is. You can basically establish here the lighting for the inner shadow. You have different blending modes here that you can use as you wish. Here you basically can just do whatever you need in terms of, here I think it's better to just see it like this. So this is the distance. It will calculate the distance with the angle of the light. Here you increase the blurriness. And that's about it. So it's inner shadow. I think the other one more useful is the drop shadow, which works the same as the inner shadow. And yeah, you can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, you can mess around with this. So in the end, you have all these outer glow that you can measure yourself. You can add gradients, for instance here, like an orange overlay like this. Now it's reversed, but if we unreverse it, we can create the Indiana Jones font. All this can be combined to create word art. It looks very Microsoft Word, but after this you can just do your own. You can go as far as you can apply different ones. As you can see here, these plus signs mean that you can create another layer. So now once you're done with this, you can just either keep it like this, collapse it, or you can just apply, if you want, rasterite layer style or rasterite type, one of these two, but I think it's layer style. And then, for instance, if you want to copy this and apply it to this one, you can copy layer styles too. Copy layer style. So we collapse this, and then we have our sphere here. Right click, and there's an option here to paste layer style. So we paste it, and voila! Has the same effects that we applied on the text, but on the graphics. And I think that could be the summary. But otherwise, we can just remove this and do our own. So as you can see, the menu, it's exactly the same. The same kind of options, the same sort of effects can be applied to graphics too. I mean, of course, it treats the graphic as a two-dimensional being. This is the sort of thing that you can do, which is kind of fun to mess around with, but it mostly will treat the graphic as a 2D object. So if you have a 3D sphere like I have here, these sort of changes would not be very welcomed. Photoshop tip number 2.
You know, we should probably both be counting.
Oh, well, let's get to it. That's double trouble. All right.
And 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 20, 40, 60.
There are shortcuts in both. I think I have a MacBook here, but I used to use Windows, and in Windows it's Control instead of Command. So every time I just say Command, it's Control. And if you click Command U, the hue and the saturation comes up. So this really is for color balancing and changing, basically color theory on the graphics. So this one, for instance, I mostly use it for changing the hue in case I wanted to change the entire color of the object. Like this is a blue ball, so if I wanted to have a green ball or whatever, or a yellow ball, I will just push this, and the saturation too. Increase and decrease the saturation. If you want to work with values, you can remove entirely the color and work with this, but you won't be able to get it back. So the other one I want to open up is Control B or Command B. Here's when something that I didn't notice is that there's this small menu over here. So far I just moved these ones and it would change the midtones. So far it did the work for me, but I did learn that when it comes down to shading and bouncing lights, there's a couple of videos that I've seen, I don't remember which one it was, but it talked about, he explained how the bouncing light should be in a color that dominates the scene. The reason why the bouncing lights on illustrations that happen on Earth are mostly either bluish or a cold color is because of the sky and because of the dominant color on the landscape. So for instance, the way you can find bouncing lights that are obviously a certain color is, for instance, when you're making people on the beach, or you're making, yeah, basically on the beach, like on the sand or on the water. If it's on the water, you know that the bouncing light's going to be cyan or like a really light blue over your skin, because the water is reflecting the light, is bouncing from the water. And when you are in the sand, that bouncing light's going to be red. So for instance here, if this sphere was a ball that was on the beach, like on the sand, the bouncing light would be a little bit warmer. But for instance, if we want to only change the highlights, you just click the highlights. I did not know there was that option there, so the only thing that would change would be the highlights. But I mean, it's very volatile, so I wouldn't rely too much on that. And in this case, it's not very good because the highlights are already white, pure white and pure black. It's very hard to modify colors on. So I think I'm just gonna let it be for now. I need more values, I think. Let's see if we can make it reddish. Nope, because it's completely dark. What the hell? But you know what I mean. Worst case, if you want a bouncing light, like if you have a beach here and you want a bouncing light on the ball, you can just like that, see? And you have it more lighter maybe. This is a really bad example. Really bad example. These are the different kinds of blurs. The only ones that I use are Gaussian blur, which is radial. So it starts from the center, it softens, or it gradually decreases the opacity. So if we want a very sharp or a very loose shadow, then we'll use one or the other. But also you can have a motion blur, which is making this ball move. So the motion here, you have minus 135, and we increase the distance. There we go. So now it's motion blur. Oh, magic. Now you know. Another very helpful thing for exporting assets or graphics for games. So for instance, if you want to crop or select the specific object or asset, it goes by activated layer. So for instance, if we want to reduce the canvas so it only selects the object and the spacing it needs, decreasing the size and therefore the amount of megabytes that it takes, you would just go to image and trim, and you can select here the things that you want to trim it for. I normally use transparent pixels, but you can use any of the other options. I also have the 4 of these selected, and when you do that, it will trim to the object. So as you can see, it is centered, it is trimmed to the last active pixel. So even if you have like a blurry, like a drop shadow here, let's do it the way we learn it. Here. And you have it like that and like that, like very, very sharp, or like not even that sharp, but like very raster layer style. And now you have it, it's a single object. So now if you want to trim this, it would take the last active or visible pixel in the layer or the graphic that's on. So now you'll trim this and it will trim accordingly. So it will trim up to this, which I think is really useful and really good for exporting assets. If you're doing an art job or doing stickers or doing whatever you needed to Oh yeah, if you're making assets for like a website and you want to keep the size of the game very low when it comes to graphics, because graphics is one of the heaviest things to manage on a game aside from music and code. I think code is the lowest, music it's the second biggest. So when you're doing web games or web browser games, so you trim this down and you want to export this, it's always safer if you want to use it for a web browser game and you need it to load it really quick to have the more optimal performance, save for web legacy. I didn't know about this and they told me when I started. And when you save for web, Photoshop already has prepared for people that work on graphics that are going to go on websites and they can crash because they need to load fast, especially if those graphics are on mobile phones. The selections are, you select here the format that you want it off. The quality can be high, but make sure it's like 60% because by being in a web browser, it's most likely they'll be small, especially if they're on phones. So 60% is more than fine because there's certain size that are graphics, you just can't see certain pixels. So you want a certain quality that will look as the image is crisp, but not super crisp because those details are gonna get lost. So that's it for today. If I have any more tips that I think could help you guys out, I'll make another video about it. Yeah, if you like videos like this, or if you like to see more of my artwork, or just simply follow my art journey, check out these links and stay tuned. Hasta luego.
Okay, that's a wrap.